Hello everyone, Time to Grind here, and today I wanted to talk about Bleeding Edge. And Bleeding Edge is a 4v4 online brawler that's made by Ninja Theory, and they're the ones that made Hellblade. I really loved Hellblade, so I was really looking forward to this. And just full disclaimer before we get started, I was actually given a free copy of the game by Microsoft in order to make a review, so I never let that stand in the way of me making a legit review. Always just like to let you guys know ahead of time. And just off the bat, from looking at trailers and screenshots, to me it looked like a third-person Overwatch game, and that's kind of what I was expecting in it. And just starting to play and looking at the screenshots, I mean the characters are so well designed. They look really, really cool. It's in this like amazing cel-shaded art style. All the characters are really unique, and I like all their abilities and everything like that. But right off the bat, as I started playing the game, I felt like the game kind of had a bit more in common with MOBAs than I originally expected. And maybe it wasn't just a third-person Overwatch game. And so the game is highly cooperative, and it really, really, really emphasizes a ton of teamwork and team synergy, and that can definitely be a good thing. When it works really well. It feels really satisfying, and it just feels really intelligent. But when it doesn't work out, it is just a completely miserable experience. And so I've played, a couple hours of this game in order to kind of, play all the characters and get a feel for how everything plays. And honestly, 75% of my games with randoms ended pretty much in the same way. We either, had teammates that would not fight together, but instead one of them would die, and then another one would go in and die, and another one would go in and die, and they had their team of 4, and we just apparently kept sending just one at a time into our demise doing that. Or someone would just leave the game, and it would take a minute or so to get another player into our game. And then so even if we were fighting as a group, 3v4s is just pretty hard in this game. And it felt so bad. And I think the reason why this happened so much, and I'll get to it a little bit in a little bit, but I feel like most people go into this game, like me, thinking it is like a third-person Overwatch, where you can kind of jump around and like fly all over the place, and you don't necessarily have to constantly fight as a team. But in this game, that is really, really important. Characters have a ton of health, and so the game is a lot about like sustaining and stuff like that. So healers are really important, because you have to make sure that if this fight's going to go on for a minute straight, if you have a healer and they don't, you are definitely going to win. So I mean, it's really important to make sure you have every piece of the team composition, kind of things you can find more in MOBAs. And I know Overwatch does it a little bit, but just to me it feels a lot more skewed to that kind of MOBA side, where you definitely need, supports and tanks and stuff like that. And so most games that I have played just had next to none communication. Occasionally, there would be one person with a mic, or some people actually pinging things, because the game does have a pinging system. I think it could be improved a little bit, but it does have a pinging system. And so I would constantly ping to everybody to group up. So, if we just kept going in one at a time and dying and dying and dying, I would keep pinging like, hey guys, let's group up. And everybody pretty much ignored me. And so I know this is something that would easily be solved by playing with a group of friends and having microphones and actually communicating. And, I'm sure a lot of players are doing that, but most of the players in these types of games are either going to be playing solo, or maybe playing with one other person, and you kind of have a duo and you get 2 other, teammates. Not everybody is constantly going to get a squad of 3 people, especially, I know this game is free on like the Xbox, kind of Game Pass, but everywhere else it's $30. So it's not a cheap game that you can just get a bunch of people into playing. So a lot of people are going to be playing solo, or just, maybe with one other person, if that. And so there's 2 game modes currently. One is kind of just a traditional control point game mode, where different control points open up at different times. And the other one is kind of something where there's different phases. And the first phase, you have to break up a bunch of like boxes and get batteries, and then after all of them have been collected, it's kind of like a phase where you have to go to different control points and actually place them down. And obviously it takes a while, and if you kill someone, you take their, battery cells. And so both of the game modes are fun, and the map design, is pretty unique. Some of the maps with like control point, the control points are actually like on a, path, and they constantly are going around the map. And so there's a lot of really cool things that this game does, especially in the map design. But I definitely think that there needs to be just kind of more content, more game modes, more things to do to keep people coming. And also, this game has, like I've been talking about, definitely has the MOBA problem, where everyone, wants to play as these flashy DPS characters that do all the damage, that get all the kills, and nobody's really wanting to play supports or tanks. And so, a lot of the times, in my experience, that meant that you pretty much are having to support every game or tank every game, otherwise, you're going to have a bad time, because like I said, the time to kill is really long, so if you don't have tanks to help sustain, or if you don't have healers to make sure you're actually healing people, you're gonna have a bad time. And one thing I noticed is, even if you have a support, so I was picking support a lot in these games because no one was wanting to play support, no one ever protected me. I mean, I know I'm not the best. I just started kind of playing this game, and so my placement and map kind of just awareness could have been better, but it just felt like I just kept getting picked off immediately, which is what you need to do. If the games are going to take a while, or the battles, you definitely want to kill the healer. That makes sense, but it seemed like nobody was protecting me. Everybody would almost die and then just run away and just completely let me die. And it's not necessarily, it might be a little bit of salt, because a lot of these games I played were just, completely, snowbally against me, where we had, players leave, or just 5 DPS characters somehow. And I honestly think that all of these problems could be solved mostly in one way, and that would be if there was a ranked system, because eventually, hopefully, you would get to a rank where people knew to group up and people knew what the team compositions were, and kind of going along with that, I know a lot of games like Overwatch and especially MOBAs are kind of going more into this kind of like where you are queuing for a role, so you just off the bat queue for DPS role or tank role or support role, and they all kind of balance things differently. Some of them incentivize, well, like, hey, if you play support or tank, your queue time's going to be practically nothing because everybody's needing you guys. And I know, like, games like League of Legends, they do things where, if you keep getting exactly what you want, maybe you're more likely to have to, pick a flex role where you're open for whatever. And so I think a ranked system, along with having a kind of thing where you can actually choose what role you're playing, would go a long way in this game. And I've kind of been complaining about a lot of the features in this game, especially with how snowbally and how a lot of people don't even understand how the game is supposed to work. But overall, this game is really, really promising. And frankly, the game is a ton of fun when it works. So I had a couple of games, not most of them, but there were a handful of games that I played that were genuinely fun when they were super close and it was very well balanced, and I didn't have any of my teammates leave the game early, and we all actually grouped up, and occasionally we'd split off in like groups of 2s and stuff like that. When it works, this game is really, really fun. All of the characters, there's not that many of them. The game did just come out, but all of the characters are really, really unique. They have extremely interesting designs. They have extremely interesting abilities. And so every character, they have their main attack, obviously. So whether you're a melee person and you're just doing a single melee, or if it's a ranged kind of thing, it's going to just depend on who you are. And then everybody has 3 different abilities. And then on top of that, you have an ultimate, but you can actually choose between 2 ultimates. So when you pick your character, every character has 2 different ultimates, so you can kind of choose what you want depending on, I'm sure some of them are just better than others, but also maybe if they're more balanced, picking, I'm going to go type of this build, or we're going on this map, so maybe this ultimate's better. So I really like that aspect. And so just, to kind of explain it as an example, one of my favorite characters was this character with a minigun. And so she could, fire her minigun. She could throw down, I think, 2 sentries at a time. She could throw out these like AoE bombs. She could like throw these jump pads on the ground that her team could use to go, like, there's a lot of verticality on this map, in the game in general, which I really like. And so I was really liking her. And then the ultimate that I was trying out with and kind of playing around with that I liked was she got a mech suit that she also got a flamethrower on the mech suit along with like her gun. And so the characters are really awesome. And like every single character, is like Overwatch quality. I'm not a big fan of Overwatch anymore, but one of the things I've loved about Overwatch is the character design and just how good the abilities, kind of mesh with each other. And it feels really, really good. And this game does amazing in terms of that character design and, in terms of the art, in terms of the voices. And one thing also, just kind of side note, the like music in this game is really, really good. The whole theme that the game kind of gives you is kind of like this like kind of like, I don't know, like retro-ish, like rock. I don't know how to explain it, but it definitely is a vibe that I really, really like. And so I mean, the thing that sets this game apart from Overwatch, on top of everything that I've talked about, besides the third person, obviously, is the lock-on system. So when attacking enemies, you can actually like lock onto them to make sure you hit them. So I mean, this is especially useful if you're a ranged character, because you don't really have to aim. Actually, you just lock on and can keep firing. And I think that does kind of make ranged characters a little bit better. I was noticing a lot more people were picking ranged characters than melee characters, and I don't know if that's because, you know, obviously everybody's like new to this game, and so along with not knowing how the game works, people are going to pick, you know, ranged things, but it did seem like they were a little bit better. But you can switch targets of who you're locked on, and it works most of the time, but in big team fights, it can get very hectic, and especially if you're like a melee character, it can kind of get a little bit weird. The whole lock-on system as a whole, I think, is functionable, but it feels like it needs a little bit more work. It's kind of wonky a little bit, and I personally can't say like how you would improve that system. I haven't played a lot of games that have like a lock-on system. To me, personally, I would have preferred if this game didn't have a lock-on system, and instead if like everything was kind of like you have to aim, but I know that that's not what this game is going for. It's kind of more of like a brawler type thing, definitely more along the lines of like a MOBA, but just more control in terms of like, you know, instead of right clicking to move and stuff like that. So I definitely understand why they do it, and I don't know how they would fix the lock-on system. Just to me, it feels very wonky at times. One thing that I do really like about this game as well is the perk system. So you can actually unlock and choose like 3 different perks. I think they're called like augments in this game. And so each character, they have a, you know, bunch of different perks. So for that mech lady that created the sentries and stuff, she had different things like would, you know, buff her, you know, little sentries, or she could have things that just buff her damage or buff her health, or, you know, all these different things. And you can create different loadouts as well. So, you know, you could have a support that does more damage, and, you know, maybe than they normally should. You could have a tank that, you know, maybe it was a little bit less tanky. You're not putting a lot of perks into being more tanky, but more damage. So if your damage dealers aren't doing the best, you have that. And I really like that because, you know, it's kind of this game that's sort of like a MOBA-ish, or has MOBA elements, but it doesn't really have like a shop or anything like that. And I'm glad it doesn't. I don't like the shop kind of systems, and then I think it adds like, it kind of breaks the flow of the game a little bit. So I think perks are the right way to do that, honestly. I like having a bunch of perks, and you can choose up to 3 to kind of give yourself a little bit customization with all of it. On top of that, there is customization. You can get different like boards, which are pretty much like your mounts. At any point you can mount, and as long as you're, you know, out of combat, you go faster. So you can kind of get different like surfboards. You can get different skins for the characters. You can get you know, like emotes and stuff like that. Kind of normal customization stuff, nothing too special. But overall, you know I've been saying a lot about this game, you know, some of it sounding negative, but I really think that this game has a ton of promise. I think right now the main thing holding it back is just the fact that 90% of the new player base is thinking it's a completely different game than it is and just not knowing how to play it. And because it's such a team-based cooperative game, if you have one person not knowing how to play the game and it's just running off on their own, I mean, it's so hard to come back from that, because if you're fighting 3v4s constantly, it's really hard to come back from that, and it just causes this huge snowball effect that I think is making a lot of people really miserable. And I know I've been seeing a lot of negative reviews about this game. Overall, I think people, you know, kind of in the same boat as me, that it's really promising. It needs more content, but it also needs a way to kind of deal with that issue, because, you know, if one of your players is trash or doesn't know how to play the game and it just tanks it for the rest of everybody, that's really hard. So I think having a ranked system is huge, and I think that's like the biggest priority this game needs to have, along with like I think unlocking the frame rate on PC. I think it's a locked frame rate. Didn't really mention that before, but that's a little bit annoying. But I know that they are fixing that. There's like a little notice in the game that says that's high on their priority list. But I think having a ranked, I think down the road having a, you know, kind of queue where you can choose like if you want to play DPS or tank or support would help a lot. That way you're not feeling like you're having to play support every game. Like it just feels like I'm playing Dota sometimes, you know. And so I think that would be really helpful. I think reworking the targeting system, because it is a little bit janky, would help a lot. And one thing I do want to say is this game does have cross-play and like cross, accounts and stuff between Xbox, Steam, and the Microsoft Store. So the player base overall is pretty healthy, and I think it had like 800 to 1,000 people just on Steam alone. So you can find that with Xbox and Microsoft Store, and it is free on like Xbox Game Pass. I think if they keep improving the game and keep adding more content, more characters, more maps, a ranked system, and improving on things that the community really wants improved, I think this game has a very high chance of having a decently sized, healthy player base, because honestly it has the charm for it, it has the character design, it's a very intelligently made game. I think that there's just, when you have such an intelligently made game that's based on teamwork and team compositions, that can kind of be hard if a lot of the players don't know how to play the game. So overall, I enjoyed it. I, obviously was frustrated by some of the things that I talked about in this video, but I definitely hope to see these things improve. Maybe I'll make a video on this game down the road, maybe in a year. It's flourishing because they did everything, because I do think that this game, like I said, has promise. But if you have played this game or seen people play it, what are your thoughts down below? I'd love to hear them. I love talking with you guys in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content. New video reviews come out about twice a week. And on top of that, as of today, we just recorded and uploaded the new episode of the Media Crash podcast, so definitely check that out. And if you guys are having a great day today, I hope you continue having a great day. If you guys aren't having a great day, I hope you guys start having a great day. But either way, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. See you guys next time.